neon lights, Brooklyn nights.
Today's topic I called Sage Against the Machine. It's about the machine matzah controversy of 1858. Today, we're familiar with, generally speaking, you could buy your Manischewitz straights, Yehuda matzahs from the store, nice square box. We're not going to be discussing it, but the fun fact is that the square matzah design was innovated by Manischewitz as a branding technique to stand out and look different. Historically, matzahs were round, even machine matzahs. And then there's Shmura matzah, the handmade matzah, which I brought with me over here, which spoilers may tip towards the side that I'm in favor of, but we have that as well for everyone to enjoy. But I think this class is pertinent both because it affects, pretty much all of us. Who doesn't enjoy a matzah, or at least eat a matzah if you don't enjoy it on Passover, and always wonder what the story is behind it, where it comes from, and as well, I think the saga behind this debate has, messages and lessons we can learn. It resonates, I'm not going to say directly informed, but it resonates with some of the conversations we have today about the role AI has in replacing, various human type of activities that we do. And it's, I think, food for thought, which hopefully if we have some time, we can maybe discuss afterwards, because I'd like to hear from you how you guys will weigh in, because I've left this class very open-ended for discussion. Without further ado, we start with all the news that's fit to print. What's fascinating about the story, and I'm going to read all this in a moment, but this debate, there are various famous rabbinic debates, throughout the centuries. This debate likely was caused by, and may very well be the first one caused by, the media, meaning that you had a newspaper called Hamagid, which was a Hebrew language newspaper that had been opened up, I think, maybe 5 or so years before this debate. Heard about this controversy in a small town, went around, asked a bunch of rabbis, got a bunch of opinions about it, and then suddenly now you have rabbis across what we'll call Central Europe, from Krakow to Lvov and Brody, that's, basically Poland, into what is today Ukraine, but then was also part of Poland, asked them a bunch of questions. They started fighting with each other, or not fighting, but debating with each other. Polemics ensued, and we're going to get into all that. So Hamagid, the newspaper, says as follows: from Galicia, beginning the month of Nisan, there's confusion and commotion here in this land. In its two major metropolitan areas, the communities of Krakow and Lvov, both required a machine for making matzot for Passover. Although such machines have been used for many years in Germany and large Jewish communities, the people of this land did not want to rely on it before consulting with the great scholars and rabbinic authorities in our country to hear their opinion on this matter. However, the responses differed, with some approving and others disapproving. So first we have the side that was against the machine. Rabbi Shlomo Kluger of Brody, this is a rabbi, I think he was born somewhere around 1780, something like that. So he was an older rabbi at this time, protested strongly. It is forbidden to do this for several reasons. One should not learn from Germany because it's not from them or their multitudes, do not follow their customs, because Germany was seen as the seat of the Enlightenment. Even though Orthodox Jews, observant Jews, were using machine matzahs at that time from Germany and France. Nevertheless, everything from Germany, when you're in Eastern Europe, was kind of like, it's not exactly our thing, it's not our style, and therefore they were suspicious of it. After him came Rabbi Mordechai Zev Ettinger of Lvov, one of the Mefarshei Hayam. This is a book that he co-authored with his brother-in-law, who we'll get to in a moment, and author of response to Rabbi Mordechai, who raised an even stronger outcry against this innovation. This is what the Maimar Mordechai Zev Ettinger wrote. After calling from the depths of his heart in his letter 7th daughter to Krakow, I have hurried to come home to separate from this prohibition, as a fire burns within me and is contained in my heart, seeing how this affliction has spread, which is a plague in the cities of Germany. We do not like machine matzahs, according to these rabbis. Now, we then have the other side. In walks in Rabbi Yosef Shaul Levi Nathanson. He was the brother-in-law of Mordechai Zev Ettinger. And he said, in contrast to these two great rabbis, stood the words of the great Rabbi Yosef Shaul Levi Nathanson, the rabbi of Lvov, joined by the wise preacher, Rabbi Shimon Aryeh Schwabbacher, who was a slightly more enlightened person. He dabbled in science. The sharp rabbinic judge, Rabbi Benjamin Zev Blumenfeld, and other great rabbis from Lvov, who ruled permissively and revealed their words in a letter open for all to see, basically saying how they saw the machine. They didn't want to pass judgment until they saw it. They looked at it, they played around with it. First time it didn't work so well, so they were suspicious. They waited another year, saw it again, and at this point in time they said, we've seen it and it is good, it is clean, it works nicely, and it makes nice kosher matzahs. So now we have a debate, both essentially of Rabbi Yosef Shaul Levi Nathanson, who is considered, to be a major rabbinic character. He's younger though, And on the other side, you have his brother-in-law, who they had co-wrote this thing called Mefar Shayam. They no longer released any more editions after this point in time, so some Rifta scholars. And Rabbi Shlomo Kluger, who was the rabbi in Brody, who was considerably older. And we have the debate. Now, just a little background about the machine. This is an early illustration of the machine Matzah machine that was used at the time. This is not an electric machine. You're not pressing a button and it's causing something to happen on its own. Instead, there are these gears. You turn the gears. You think about this is like the mid 19th century. This is the type of technology that was cutting edge at the time. Using these gears to run the dough through the machine, it flattens it out. They would then use a mold to cut out round matzahs at the time. That's one of the reasons why square matzahs was a great innovation, because you don't have the leftover sides. You could just cut it, straight across. They would cut out round matzahs so it looked like the matzah people were used to making, and they would bake it and it would go through. And people were afraid about the fact that you have this machine that is doing something a little bit out of the norm. So here we have some of the issues. All this was stirred because this rabbi in Krakow heard about the machine, wanted to bring it. People wanted to bring it to Krakow. He got nervous. He's the one who kicked off letter writing. His letters were picked up by the newspaper Amagid, and so these are some of the issues people had with the machine. And now I've come for these are a little bit longer, but I figured the language was fun, and you get to see some of the passion behind what they wrote. I've come for one matter that is now that has been newly introduced in our city to make matzot for Passover using a machine, saying that this is what it is done and practiced in Jewish communities in large cities in Germany, such as the Royal City, Vienna, Breslau, Berlin, and London, and others like them. They presented the request before the rabbis of the righteous court, and we said we cannot do anything until the 3 city judges travel from here to the city of Gleiwitz in Silesia, that's kind of the border between Poland and Germany, the place where the machine operates. I don't know if it operated there, or if they had one there, or if they made them there, to see on what foundation it stands. And so it was done as they traveled there, and upon their return, they said the matter does not contradict the law, and this is how the machine works. So he says, initially, I asked the three rabbis in Krakow to go check out the machine. They came back and said, we can't say anything is wrong about it. I don't know if it sat well with them or not. It was different, strange, Passover. Everyone likes to do whatever you kind of traditionally do, but we don't see anything wrong, and therefore they can't find a reason to forbid it. So therefore, he writes it. He says, the famous rabbi and wealthy man, our teacher, Rabbi Leib Horowitz, may his light shine, asked me where my opinion stands in this matter. I said I needed to consult with great authorities from the lands of Poland and Galicia, except for Germany, where they love new things. Nothing like this has been found, and why should our city be the first in such a new matter? And therefore, he's writing out to find out what's going on. And so the first person to respond to him is Rabbi Shlomo Kluger, the rabbi in Brody. And he says, Monday of the Torah portion of Mishpatim, this is going to put it probably sometime in February of 1858 in Brody, to honor of our teacher, Reb Chaim Nathan, may his light shine, who sits on the seat of judgment. He's a rabbi. He's an important figure. Regarding your question, whether to conduct the making of matzah for Passover holiday using a machine that has been newly introduced from Germany, from German lands, and one should not learn from the Germans for several reasons. Not learn from the Germans. We're going to go over the 3 core. I hope no one here is, if any Yekas, people of German descent. This is not a slight against you. This is just and the Galicians. Anyhow, so the first reason that bothered Reb Shlomo Kluger, and I think it's one of the more resonant ones today, is the question of employment. Why? And behold, the reason for the prohibition in this matter appears to be, first and foremost, it is not within the bounds of righteousness and ethics to rob the poor whose eyes look forward to this, because from this help that they provide with making matzot, they have great support for the abundant Passover expenses of our people. Poor people would get jobs in the bakeries, right? They're being employed by the bakeries. This is a way to help them, and we see from the Megillah. We do not read the Megillah on the Sabbath. What is the reason? The Talmud says, Rabbi Yosef said, because the eyes of the poor look forward to the reading of the Megillah. Poor people know when the Megillah is read, there's a mitzvah on Purim to give matanat lavionim, to give charity to the poor. So all the poor people know, if we're reading the Megillah, then we're going to get our charity. So they all show up to shul. What happens? It's Shabbos. Shabbat, you're not allowed to deal with money. They're all going to go hear the Megillah on Shabbat, and they're not going to be able to get the charity. We don't want to do that to them. So therefore, we cancel reading the Megillah on Shabbat. We read it the day before and the day after. There's a different discussion around that. But the point is that we don't read it on Shabbat because we don't want the poor people to show up and find out that they're not going to be able to get the charity that they so need. So therefore, concluding the first reason, Shlomo Kluger says, thus the reading of the Megillah is an obligation from the prophets, right? This is part of, the 24 books of the Hebrew Tanakh. And they cancel it on the Sabbath because the eyes of the poor look forward to the reading of the Megillah. All the more so in this case, where there's no trace of a mitzvah to use the machine. Who's going to have to use the machine? Poor people are employed right now making matzah. And more so, there's another issue because there's a commandment to give charity to the poor to cover their Passover expenses before Passover. And also, the middle class householders, and all the more so, the common people do not give meot chitim, charity for Passover. This is a custom to give, customary among Israel, meaning amongst the Jewish people, and therefore they fulfill their obligation by at least allowing the poor to earn by helping with the matzot. Not so if this too is canceled, because like canceling the commandment of charity for Passover, because people didn't know that they should be supporting the poor before Passover. So, the very least, if you had this job opportunity where people who needed a job would roll out the matzahs, so therefore, by canceling this, we're going to be robbing them of their ability to make money. Second reason, power of intent. Matzah has to be made with the intent to be used for the mitzvah by somebody who is obligated in the mitzvah. This is the general Jewish rule that if you want to be able to convey obligation to someone else, you have to be obligated in it yourself. And somebody who is considered to be mentally clear and able to have these thoughts. So therefore, a person does not fulfill his obligation. This is from the Code of Jewish Law about the power of intent behind making a matzah. A person does not fulfill his obligation to eat matzah on Pesach night, except when the matzah was kneaded, arranged, and baked by a mentally competent Jew for the sake of Pesach. If, by contrast, one of these stages of preparing matzah was performed by a non-Jew, why a non-Jew is not obligated to make matzah, so therefore he can't give the intent to do it. It's not a question of mental clarity, obviously, for sure not, but that's one thing. Or people who were historically considered to be unreachable and unable to figure out what's going on, either a minor, because they don't yet have a fully developed mental capacity, or somebody who is mentally emotionally challenged, meaning to an extreme degree, like, the Talmud speaks of various things like that, but somebody who's unable to do that, or a deaf mute. At the time, historically, somebody who was deaf and mute simultaneously was unable to communicate with the world, and therefore we did not yet have the ability to, today with medical technology and then advances and things like that, we're able to communicate with them. But at the time, someone like that historically was unable to be spoken to, and therefore they could not make the matzah because we have no way of figuring out intent for these three other cases. Even a mentally competent Jewish adult stands over one of the above individuals and instructs them and admonishes them to perform the task for the sake of Pesach. A person may not fulfill his obligation with a matzah prepared in this fashion. Basically, you have to, even if you're supervising it, still, this person who's doing it, because we have no way of certifying that they have the full intent needed, they're unable to do it. Now, I'm not going to read all this over here. You should be aware that there are some opinions that say that that's not true. That if, as long as the supervision is done by somebody who is obligated in the mitzvah and is fully able to perform it, then that's fine. But if somebody is not, but if this, as long as supervision works, then it's okay. And therefore, we say that, listen, if it's an emergency situation, you're on a desert island, the only matzah is able to be made this way, you could do it. I don't have my glasses, I can't see the question. If someone wants to read it.
If a child's able to answer questions about
we'll do the questions at the end. Yeah.
Matzah.
So then it could be used. So the point is, what Shlomo Kluger says, this machine is no better in its action than the action of a minor, somebody who's not able to do it. And if so, when someone does not fulfill the obligation of the commandment to make matzah. So that's the other issue. The machine can't have intent. Human beings can have intent. If they're able to do it, they're able to apply to give it over. But a machine is never able to do that. Finally, there is a technical issue. Who knows that the machines themselves may not be very good. At the time, they weren't sure how the metal would react with the matzah, would cause it to ferment faster or not. Machine has gears and all kinds of different crevices and cracks. So who knows if the action of the machine prevents leavening? We have not found in the legal authorities anything except regarding the action of a person with hands, which is with greater force. Who can estimate the nature of this? And even if it prevents leavening, many crumbs in dough remain stuck inside the machine. And if so, one needs to remove the crumbs from the machine so they do not mix with the dough. Also, we know that it is common for whole or broken wheat grains to be found in the matzot, and therefore it's not properly incorporated. And if so, a person kneading through the feeling of his hand senses it. You're kneading this, you could feel there's something there. Okay, you could take it out, remove it. But if not, it gets left in there and can become chametz. This is not the case with the machine. Therefore, do not change the custom of your fathers. The Germans will do what their hearts desire as is their way, and we will follow the footsteps of our fathers, and from them we will not deviate right or left. This is his thing. Now we have the response, the side in favor of modernization. All this, by the way, after the newspaper came out. So then Shlomo Kluger rushed to create something called Modal Beit Yisrael, which is like, this is an announcement for all the Jewish people. It was a polemic he put out that had his essays and those of other people saying why it was no good. So Yosef Shal Nathanson then wrote something called Kuntres Bittul Moda, a booklet that is undoing this announcement to try and argue why it should be done. He actually publishes at the beginning a letter from his father. It says, I know you can be quick-tempered, but keep it calm. So you can see if this is wording up here, how upset he was. According to this reason, that the eyes of the poor look forward to this, why does he not forbid the machine that has been innovated for the printing of holy books, which has caused many workers to be idle from their work because of this? Perhaps he too, God forbid, has stumbled in this and they printed his books on the machine. If you have an issue with mechanization because it robs the poor of their jobs, guess what? Rav Shlomo Kluger, you printed a lot of books. It used to be you could employ many scribes to copy the books, and they made a lot of money. Today, with the printing press, you create books at scale. Guess what? If that's a problem with the machine for making matzahs, it's a problem for books. You cause unemployment as well. That's the first issue. Going on, this is another rabbi who was quoted in the book who also brings up an issue about feeding the poor. How could it arise in religion that in the business of making matzot, they set their eyes on the profit of the poor? The main thing is to choose the most correct way to maintain kashrut. If you're making a kosher product, your goal is to make a kosher product and to make sure that you could do it that in a way that is optimally able to be used for the mitzvah of matzah. And the journalists of heart can contribute charity without this as the soul desires. You feel you need to feed the poor. Guess what? Speak to somebody and say, hey, we have a lot of poor people in our community. You make a nice income. Support the poor. That's how you could do it. Why does it have to be that matzah has to suffer because of the poor? And most also, through the machine, there's a profit for other poor people as they obtain matzah cheaply. Now you can make matzahs at incredible scale. Suddenly now matzah, instead of being a handmade product, which is made by one individual, you can have a machine that pumps out a bunch of matzahs. The entire market is going to be flooded by cheap matzah, and the poor will benefit that way. So this is a question about poverty seems to be addressed. And in fact, when Rav Shlomo Kluger rewrote his essay to publish as a polemic, he took this argument, which was first, he moved all the way to the end, because I think he realized that if you're going to argue, you have to argue on halachic grounds. If you're going to argue in economics, so then it's going to be, who says his reasoning stands up. Second, you say there's a question of intent. Now keep in mind, we're talking over here about a machine where you are taking a crank and manually pumping out matzah. What he wrote, this machine is no better than the work of a miner. I don't know what he is talking about. Do you think the machine is made by sorcery? They throw the dough there and it rolls out by itself and a large dough is born through it? Don't many strong men with a roller roll with the roller until a large matzah is formed? You take a bunch of rolling pins, you make matzah. This machine, it's a big rolling pin. You put it in there, you pull the crank. So therefore, it's still being made through mechanical means, and therefore, it doesn't seem to be an issue there as well. And finally, what about the kosher question? But he wrote that we found that only work with the hands prevents leavening, but the work of a machine who can estimate nature, this too is nonsense. What difference does it make between wood and metal? And what he wrote, that many times crumbs and dough remain stuck inside the machine. All this work is done with in 3 minutes, and no dough is stuck to the roller and table. Rather, everything is clean. He looked at it, he checked it out, it looks good. Also, he wrote that it is common for a whole of broken wheat grains to be in the matzot. I said this too is nonsense, for even here, he could feel when they touch the matzah made afterwards by hand. You take the matzah, you pick it up, you see, you examine it before, and you add the additional step if you're worried about that. There's no reason not to use the machine. And in fact, Rabbi Yosef Shal Nathanson argued the machine is better than human output. And everyone who stands during the making of matzot will testify how many obstacles arise in the making of matzot prepared by people and light-minded servants. You have people that are employed over there. They're not serious. They're just trying to earn a buck. They don't really care about the matzah. They don't want it to be done. They don't care if it's done properly. For these 2 years, since I was appointed as a rabbi and head of the court here, I established they should place trustees in every matzah bakery. And even with this, we found many obstacles. Workers stole many doughs and also received and baked their bread between sessions. What happens? They want to make a pita. They go ahead and they make chametz in the oven in between during the break. And also, when they stand all day and night, their strength and weekends, they get tired. They're not able to keep up with the workload, and they're doing a bad job with the machine. Jewish men of strength work, and they work completely, and they bake much in one day, and the greatness of the speed is immeasurable, and therefore this machine is much better than a human being. This is next, so to speak. If you need a seder and you want to eat some matzah with us, you're welcome to join. But I think these are the two sides of the machine. I think what is fascinating about this debate is really on the argument of the machine itself. You could say the machine is better or it's not. I'm not an expert in terms of the chemical qualities that metal does in terms of causing matzah to ferment faster. In terms of the questions about intent, there have been changes since this initial machine. The initial machine was done manually. Today you're pressing a button. It's much harder to say that by pressing a button and making the matzah that the same level of intent is imparted. It's not to say that there are people who don't rely on it. They do. Obviously, there are many machine matzahs, which are great to have on Passover if that's what you have. But that to say that it is a step further removed from human action in terms of making it. And finally, in terms of the impact of the poor, and it really goes both ways. Today, thankfully, handmade matzah is available at great scale. I have matzah here that was handmade in Ukraine. So helping out some of our Jewish brothers and sisters there that we're able to make the matzah and get it our way. And I think beyond that, what I find meaningful about handmade matzah is matzah is called the bread of affliction, right? But it's also called the bread of redemption. This is something that some of the great rabbis said. People look at matzah. Listen, you don't have to necessarily like the taste of matzah. I do, but that's me and that's personal preference. But at the end of the day, the matzah represents a sense of self-nullification, that when you're beginning your Passover experience, this is the birth of the Jewish people. It's our personal birthday from a certain sense as well, as we go on the journey of Exodus from Egypt and the journey to receive the Torah on Sinai on Shavuos, which is, at the end of Sfirat Omer, the end of the 50-day period, when we prepare 7 weeks, when we prepare for the giving of the Torah. And therefore, when you're starting off your journey, when you're learning something new, you got to put your ego on the side. You put yourself on the side for a moment, and you say, something, I'm open to the possibilities of what the evening possesses. A handmade matzah kind of tends to almost look like a bowl because it arches a little bit. It's almost like a vessel that you're saying, I'm making myself flat like a matzah. I am removing my ego. I'm allowing the inspiration of the Seder to take place. 4 cups of wine may help. And then ultimately after that, I'm going to put myself aside. And then after Passover is over, I'm going to eat something yeasty. I'm going to be able to reintroduce my sense of self-worth, my sense of importance. And then following, when we get to Shavuos, it's actually a commandment to eat leavened bread at that point in time. We can now fully introduce our sense of self back into the process and be there. For those interested, I used AI you could scan the QR code for later, but I used AI to take the entire polemics and make a rap battle out of it. I could send a link afterwards as well. It's on YouTube, but it's like a 6-minute rap battle between the various rabbis doing it. So that's something I recommend for later. But in any event, I don't know if you have any questions, comments, thoughts. Would love to hear what everybody said.